Welcome to today's session of 20 for 20 in 2020. As most of you have learned to find out, I have started a series where I'm asking 20 questions of 20 professionals, and I hope to get this all done before the end of the year. And the whole point of it is to help you find people to be the right ones to partner with as you make important decisions that impact your life. And as many of you know, I'm Ellen Newman, a trusted insurance advisor with the Norton Advisory Group, and I help people with creative solutions to estate planning, business succession, retirement, and long-term care strategies using insurance in a creative way to create outcomes that will be useful for them and helpful to them. At the end of the program, I'm going to talk to you a bit about an offer I'm going to put out there for you, as well as some changes that are very important that are taking place in the insurance industry. So please keep listening to the very end. And today I have a special guest, Rebecca Eddy, who I had met many years ago through the Estate Planning Council of New York and have stayed in touch with and appreciate knowing. And the key focus of what she's involved in is she's one of the founders and head of Eddy and Shine, and it's a firm that focuses on helping people with personal financial management. And she is a wonderful professional in that realm, and we're going to explore that. And before we get started on our 20 questions, I'm just going to say, how have you been able to cope with this pandemic, and how are you managing?
I'm doing pretty well, yeah. Both our company has done well. We've been able to do most of our work virtually and keep everybody supported in the way that they're accustomed. So, yeah.
That's great. I know you, I think, just celebrated your 20th anniversary
Right.
with your company, so that's fantastic. So we're going to get started. My first question is, what is the primary focus of your practice?
So doing personal finance management includes helping people with their personal, financial, legal, and insurance matters, and helping them to coordinate their relationships with their attorneys and accountants, financial advisors, insurance brokers, and any other folks that come along. And so it covers a whole gamut of things, but that's the focus. And we respond to new ideas and projects that are thrown at us on a regular basis.
Very interesting. So what led you to this particular career path?
Well, like a lot of people in my profession, it sort of just happened. In my case, it happened because a friend asked me to pay her bills while she and her husband and child were out of the country for 6 months. When they came back, they asked me to stay on and continue to do work for them. And she was my client for 28 years. And in that time, she made referrals to other people. And so that's how I got started.
Fascinating. And what are some of the credentials? I know you have some really strong credentials that brings you the expertise needed for this career path.
So I have an MBA from Yale School of Management, and most of our staff have some MBA or some form of master's. And I'm a certified professional daily money manager as part of the professional organization called the American Association of Daily Money Managers.
That's great. Now, how did you get to create your current firm?
So as I said, I started by helping this friend of mine, and I had a few other jobs that I was doing part-time, building it up around my daughter's schedule when she was a little girl. And then one of my jobs was working for the New York Festival of Song with Gideon Shine. And after 4 years, I decided that I really wanted to try to grow this personal finance management side of my life. And so I told him that I was going to resign. And the next day when I came, he asked if he could join me. So in 2000, we worked on carefully extricating ourselves from the New York Festival of Song and setting up our business. And we did incorporate in November of 2000.
Wow. That's interesting. I didn't know that little piece of it. That's What are some of the highlights of your career experience over the years?
So I've had a lot. um, the biggest highlight, I'd say, is really learning how wonderfully fascinating my clients are. And originally I was working with busy professionals, and then I was more and more, I had clients who were seniors, and I was discovering all of these people who were scientists and artists and architects and just a wide range of things. One woman graduated from Smith and got on a boat and went to Turkey and taught English as a second language in the 40s. And another one was an innovator in the world of advertising. And so it's just been, that's been fascinating. And then on top of that, I've had the opportunity to conferences, national conferences of the American Association of Daily Money Managers and the National Association of Professional Organizers, training other people to do the work I do. And that's been a lot of fun. And I also do a bunch of webinars in that vein. And I was published in the New York State Bar Association Journal. And so I felt that was a little feather in my cap. And I've been contributed to one book. So there have been some nice things.
That's great. That's terrific. Lots to be proud of. What type of clients do you tend to work with mostly?
So like I said, I started with busy professionals, and I continue to have some very high net worth busy professionals. And then also the majority, probably 80%, are seniors, and they tend to be anywhere mid 70s to our oldest one is 103.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is very
right. And then
wonderful.
the company has also taken on working with millennials who maybe their parents will pay for us to help them get out of credit card debt and to start building up a savings account. And that's been rewarding for some of my staff to do that. And we work, and then there's also estates. An executor will come to us just sort of tearing their hair out that there's just too much to handle. And so we do the project management behind that. So.
Right, that's terrific. That's very good. What are some of the problems or issues you are helping your clients address? You've sort of touched on that. What else have you been focusing on for specific clients?
So a lot of people come to us, either the senior themselves or maybe the adult children or busy professionals, like I said, and there's just a sense of overwhelm. They just overwhelmed by the day-to-day handling of their papers and their finances. And so handling that is the entree into their homes. And then we work on a lot of the things that I described already, but it's a lot of it is sort of project management, and sometimes it's somebody will say, I'd really like to renovate my summer house, and how am I going to finance it? And so then pulling in the accountant and family members to have a discussion about, number one, whether it should be done, and number two, how it can be financed. And they may turn to us for the answers, but our answer is, let's coordinate the important parties in this. Or another woman wanted to have a friend living nearby and wanted to help her buy a co-op. And so how do you do that? And again, pulling in all the important parties and a lawyer who would put together a contract with the client, with the friend. And
well, that's very important. A lot of people find those things daunting, and it's wonderful to have someone to guide them through that. That's terrific. What is your experience in dealing with the families of the clients you help? You've touched on that a little bit. Maybe you can expand a little further on that.
I think it runs the gamut. Depends on the family.
Of course.
uh, so if family members are calling us in, they will be doing it for several different reasons. One is they may live across the country or somewhere else in the world and just cannot provide the support they would like to be able to support to their parents. Others are just too busy with his family, philanthropic work, their own work, and profession, and then so we will really take on the primary role of working with the parent.
Mhm.
Some family members are very much in the mix, in the soup, so to speak, and sometimes that's wonderful, and we just easily have a good rapport, and we work back and forth. And others can be challenging. What can I say?
Of course.
Right.
Every situation, I'm sure, is different.
But I have to also say that we have a lot of people who fall into the category of solo agers, people who are aging and do not have any family members. And so we provide a really important support for those folks.
That's a great, important aspect, I'm sure, and real benefit to them, I'm sure. How do you deal with clients that have multiple residents? Which I'm sure, since you said you have some wealthier clients, that is probably
Right.
quite common and might create a different dynamic.
Well, the nice thing is that most of them have one main address to which their bills come. And so at least pre-pandemic, we were going to their homes and handling it. We've always done a good amount of work online. And so we've been able to handle a lot of that, and vendors to send bills by email. And but yeah, so we do a lot of our work on Quicken and record keeping on Quicken, and so we're able to report out to our clients how they're spending money on any particular house, and we can just divide it by categories and be able to make those kinds of reports.
Right, which is important.
Is that really what you meant?
Well, just sometimes you have people with different needs because they're dealing with more complex situations because of them having to own different residents, being in different states. It can create maybe different countries, different varieties of things, right?
So we're having to keep our eye on many balls when somebody has multiple residents and identify that taxes are due quarterly or annually, and real estate taxes, for instance. I was just thinking about that the other day for a client, and then interacting maybe with a house manager in one house and a manager in another house, and so it's being on top of all those things.
Right, exactly. I think that, again, serves the client well to have somebody who's going to coordinate that.
Just I can add also, if they're doing a major renovation, we're tracking all that information so that they'll have that for the time when they turn around and sell the house.
Which is very important as well. Okay. Now, do you provide formal updates or reviews or reports or maintenance programs for people to work with when you're guiding them?
So it's not a formal across the board system that we have in place, because each client has a different need from the next one. So with one client, where we're doing almost all of the bill paying online, and then we're entering everything into Quicken, we will create a transaction report and we'll let them know what was paid in a given session. For other people, they may not have any interest in this at all, and so our reports are more for us to be able to keep track of how they're spending their money, and then also at year end to be able to report to the accountant. And then, of course, on occasion, an adult child might ask for a report on how things are going.
Right. This way you can provide the family member with that information as well, which is great. Now, what is it like to work with you in the beginning when they first start in a relationship with you, and ultimately over time in the long run?
Well, let me just talk about the steps, maybe. The first step is somebody will email or call, and we will arrange to have a phone call with them. And 20 minutes often turns into a lot longer than 20 minutes. But so we start to get a sense of what the need is, what generated the phone call, what desire did they have. And we try to unpack, get some idea of what their issues are beyond the initial phone call, the initial idea that made them make that phone call. And then once we have that and we feel like we might be able to help them, then we'll set up an initial assessment, and 2 of us will meet with them. So we just finished an initial assessment this afternoon on Zoom.
Congratulations.
In this case, it was the client's financial advisor, and 2 of us. And the reason we have 2 of us is we want to make sure that if ever one of us is not available, the client has seen another face and can feel comfortable reaching out to that other staff member. And it also means that if the primary person working with a client wants to come back and talk about the client in the staff meeting and bounce some ideas off, that we can visualize the client and know some of the basic information. So it's helpful that way. And we can also just be available to pick up if we need to. Then the next step is that there's usually about 3 months of, I don't know if you want to call it onboarding or ramping up. It's often plowing through the chaos that they might have. Some people are very organized, but a lot of people have had some incident that just slowed them down. And so it's getting those things in order. And sometimes it's getting their legal documents in place. Sometimes it's putting things on auto payment, and it could be a range of things. And back taxes. So, and then once that's in place, we get a better sense of how often we will need to meet with them. And we go into what's more of a maintenance mode. And it might be, let's say, a few hours twice a month, something like that.
Right. That's very helpful in understanding the process. Now, what is, let's see, how do you determine your fees, and what would they include?
Okay, so you cut out a little bit, but it's...
Oh, I said, how do you determine your fees and what do they include?
Okay. We charge on an hourly basis. So it's, our initial assessment is set at 1 fee, and then we have an hourly fee. And then if we're traveling, anything over an hour, we do charge it about half the price of our normal fee.
Okay. Well, that's good to know how that's figured out. What are some of your experiences in mitigating or dealing with bookkeeping and tax work concerns that your clients have?
Sometimes, depending on when a person hires us, so about now means that we need to go backwards and identify what activity they've had and what their deductions are. And so we usually pull that together through Quicken, and usually by downloading from online access to their bank accounts and credit cards. And then we will be able to report that to the accountant. And we have a general understanding of how accounting works and how, taxes work. And so we can have conversations with the accountant. We can look at past tax returns to see if there's something else that we should be looking for. We work to gather all their 1099s and K1s and get them all into one place. So I like to say that we can be the accountant's best friend.
That makes sense, and I'm sure they love having you there. You probably do much more of an effective job of gathering that than the client might have otherwise. So it's a big plus, right? So how often do you communicate with your client about what their needs are?
Again, it varies, but especially in the beginning, we will get a handle on how their cash flow is working.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're called into the home of a senior who maybe has just recently taken on home care, we will see if they have a good long-term care insurance policy that's covering the care, or whether there's a major bump up in what they need from their financial advisor. And then we'll work with the financial advisor to really come up with a plan so that there's a regular monthly payout to the client to cover their expenses.
Mm-hmm. What other services do you provide or issues do you address with the client?
I think we've covered a lot of that already.
You did. When you said you, like, for example, you cover insurance, what did you mean by that?
So we have one person who specifically focuses on insurance, and for most of her clients are not seniors. They're people who have out-of-network insurance plans and usually see doctors who are out of network, and will often have very complicated claims process. And so that one staff person just focuses on that because it's a real specialty and she's really good at it. And the rest of us will submit the usual claims for out-of-network appointments, just as a standard practice in the process of working on their bill paying and things. But when it comes to the more complicated things, then the other staff person does it.
That's good.
But we can also do there's major medical catastrophic claims and long-term care claims. So,
Right. So you help the client with this variety of claims that they have in different categories of insurance that they may be using or need to use, which is very helpful because these can be complex. I've heard people complain about how challenging that can be. So it's nice to have that kind of support and guidance.
One other thing that we provide is we'll often be the ones that will identify that a client doesn't have the funds to cover their long-term care, in which case we will refer them to an elder law attorney, and then work with the elder law attorney who usually generates a list of about 20 items that need to be gathered, documents, and help collect those documents and get them to the attorney, and so help people get on Medicaid. And then once they are on Medicaid, the people we work with tend to have a lot of income, and so some of that monthly income needs to go into what's called a pooled income trust, and we will work with getting the bills to the pooled income trust. They'll pay it, and so there is a monthly ongoing activity that we're involved with for them. And then there's recertification once a year, and they still have tax returns to do, so we're involved with the accountant on that. So so there's this Medicaid aspect, and we've been doing that for close to 20 years.
Well, that's important to be, because that's a complex process that a lot of people need help with, again, to help work them through that so they get to where they need to be. What are some of your financial planning priorities in terms of working with people's finances?
That's a perfect follow-up question to the Medicaid one. So we're always thrilled when we meet with somebody who's starting to have home care to find out that they have a really good long-term care insurance policy in place.
Mhm.
But there are people who don't. And so it's become our mission to try to educate younger people to really think through what needs to be saved now that will help them to cover their long-term care 60 years from now, 37 to 50 years. But if they can, we encourage them to talk to a long-term care insurance specialist like yourself, and see if long-term care insurance purchase would be possible. And it's we believe in it strongly, and I've had my policy for about 18 years and
Mhm.
willing to pay the increase in premiums because I know how valuable it is. And it's and if you do the math, it doesn't matter if you're paying for 10 or 20 years. In 1 year, you could make back that money. So
That's that's so important to let people know that, because unfortunately a lot of people don't realize when they should get started and what they need to do. And the kinds of policies that you bought and that actually I bought way back when we were younger are very hard to come by now. And those of us that have them, we have seen those premiums go up. And today, actually, there's a new way of doing that, which is beneficial to younger people who should take action. You can buy more of a regular life insurance policy that has a long-term care rider. So you can control the premiums. And if you wind up using long-term care, that's fine. You might just wind up reducing the death benefit, but you still have that. And it's just a lot better, and you don't lose the premium, and you actually make use of it, or you actually don't have to worry about those increases that you experienced in the old type of policies that most of us wound up with, which is nothing wrong with the ones that we've gotten, but
no.
the world has changed and there's a new way of doing this today. So those are conversations that I look forward to having with people that might want to explore their choices today. And but that's not always the insurance with that rider might not always be the choice. There are other options as well, but they have to be explored. And the younger you are when you start, the better, of course, as we both know. So that's important. So let's see. What can your client do to help you and your with your work and to keep the fees down, since obviously you charge them on an hourly basis? Mhm.
I would say that the biggest thing is being actively responsive if we ask for something. And so I would say the people who spend the most money on our services are folks who ask us to do something, we get to a point where they're ready to make a decision, and then they don't make that decision. And then we have to come back and revisit it a few months later or a year later, and often have to do a lot of the same work again. Whether it's, I have a client who wants to move, but she doesn't, we've met with realtors and we've done all kinds of things, and then she just gets cold feet. And then about 6 months later, we do this again. So it's gotten to be very expensive for her, and I try to avoid it. Now I say, are you really sure you want to go through this process? If you're not going to do it, then I'm not going to do it.
All right. That makes sense. And it's good that you're honest and upfront about that with them. Now, we were talking about long-term care. What types of long-term care advice do you offer planning? Because it's not just about the insurance, but it's some of the things you already said. But if you want to expand on that a little further on how you can be helpful to your clients.
I would say that the main thing is to really start putting aside money. And if you're working for a company that has any kind of a retirement plan, and especially if they have a matching plan, put money aside. Even if they don't have a matching plan, use what you put in as much as you can, and then just forget about it and live off of what's left. And if they have a matching plan, try to match it, put in as much as you can, and take advantage of this free money that's coming from the company. And if you're a solopreneur or a 1099 worker, still try to figure out a way to put aside money, and because that money will just continue to grow over years and years. And I know people, we've hit the 2008 cycle, we've hit this cycle where there are times when the bottom falls out of the market, but in the long run, the money really builds up. And so you want to have, think about IRAs, Roth IRAs, regular investments, and just little by little build up your safety net of a savings account, and then build up an investment account, which can then either help you purchase long-term care insurance or life insurance policies, or just be there to cover your health care when you need it.
Right. That's very true. And having been a personal financial advisor myself and an investment advisor, the type of advice you're pointing out are the kinds of things that I would always tell people. And it's so important that you put money away and not worry about those ups and downs in the market on a short-term basis, but really keep your eye on your long-term goals. And putting money in retirement plans generally has been very important, especially with what you pointed out, where you're getting these matches and you can create some amazing growth. And don't consider that as a resource when you're doing other things in your life, because that should not be your primary way of tapping into money. Use other focuses, not the money that you put in for the long run. Right. So now we're reaching, we're getting closer to the end. Who in your office would discuss your clients' issues in your absence? You talked about some of that, but go into that.
So we have several people working in the office right now. It's Arlene Glotzer and Mary Sansevero, and both of them are well versed on my clients, and I'm well versed on their clients. And so any one of them could access our clients' files and would be able to answer questions if I wasn't available.
Terrific. That's helpful to know. Okay, so now we're actually down to our last question. And this is, what can you tell us about yourself that we couldn't find out on the internet?
So I'm not sure if you're talking about a personal thing or business, but I can say that I absolutely am passionate about genealogy. And all the books back here are books on genealogy.
Interesting.
And I've loved the hunt, the puzzles, and putting things together, and also all the history that's come alive for me as I've gotten to know more about my ancestors. So.
That is a wonderful piece of information. Do you help your clients with that as well?
I keep hoping somebody's going to ask me to do
that. How fascinating. Well, okay, so this was great, and I'd like you to tell our viewers how the best way to reach you would be. What's your contact information that they should use?
So at this point, the best thing is to email me at Rebecca@eddyandshine.com. And
want to spell that for them? Eddy and Shine.
Yeah, right. So it's Rebecca, REBECCA, at Eddy, EDDY, and AND, Shine, SCHEIN.com.
Okay, great.
And then we can set up an appointment to talk on the phone.
That's terrific.
Or by Zoom.
Right, exactly, these days, right? Of course. Okay, so in the beginning, I promised that I would talk a little bit about something I'm going to offer our listeners, and that is, because of all the changes that are taking place in the insurance industry, in the economy, and the transition into a new regime in terms of the Biden administration. Lots of things are going on that have an impact on your current insurance portfolios. So if you have insurance policies that you've been holding on to for 3 or 4 years, they should definitely be reviewed. First of all, there were changes in the actuarial tables, and there's new pricing going on, and there's new impact on particular products as a result of these lower interest rates. So I'm offering a complimentary review, and if you contact me at ella@nortonadvisorygroup.com, I can set up a virtual appointment and we can look over what you currently have, and if it's fine and everything's okay, great. But if it is not what it used to be or what it was intended for, we can talk about how to take care of that now in this current circumstance of this economy. Also, because there are probably going to be changes in how much you can pass forward in terms of your estate without tax consequences as a result of changes that the Congress and others are going to probably put in place over time, it is a point of time to take some action now in terms of moving assets forward or outside of your estate. And there are ways to do that using premium financing and insurance strategies that can have a very powerful impact and create deep discounts on the asset values that you're moving. And they need to be looked at sooner than later. Before the year end is the best time, but if not, early next year would be also important. And just in general, insurance companies are repricing their products. And so if you're thinking about buying insurance, the sooner you do that, the better, because they're being impacted by, these low insurance components. So I'd like you to take a look at Eddy and Shine's website to find out more about Rebecca, and look at Norton Advisory Group to find out more about my background. And I'm hoping you will be looking for various versions of 20 for 20 on 2020. I will be posting this and others that I've done in the past on the internet, and in terms of LinkedIn, I'll put them on LinkedIn and maybe other websites that you'll be finding. And I hope that you will all stay healthy in these difficult times, and that you will have a happy and healthy and wonderful holiday and a wonderful 2021. And with that, I want to thank you, Rebecca, for joining me today.
Thank you, Ella. Appreciate it.